Martha Sterling stood at Karen's front door at exactly 7 a.m. Friday morning, wearing her best power suit and carrying a briefcase that had seen more HOA battles than most people had seen movies. She rang the doorbell with the firm, measured pressure of someone about to make an offer that couldn't be refused. Karen answered the door in yesterday's kaftan, her hair arranged in what could generously be called a spiritual updo, and her eyes bright with the manic energy of someone running on pure conviction and caffeine. "Martha!" Karen exclaimed, as if they were old friends instead of sworn enemies. "Have you come to experience the earth healing session? I've created a beautiful mud therapy environment where the old Jacuzzi used to be." Martha peered past Karen into the backyard, where the condemned Jacuzzi had indeed been transformed into what looked like a small-scale archaeological dig mixed with a pottery class gone wrong. 3 neighbors were currently buried up to their necks in mud, while the Duck family had relocated to a kiddie pool filled with what appeared to be organic compost. "Karen, we need to talk," Martha said, her voice carrying none of its usual authority. "Business to business." Something in Martha's tone made Karen pause. She studied the HOA president's face, noting the absence of her usual righteous indignation. "Come in," Karen said finally, stepping aside. Martha's briefcase clicked open with the precision of a surgical instrument. Inside were spreadsheets, legal documents, and what appeared to be a business proposal. "You've got something here," Martha began, settling into Karen's living room chair like she belonged there. "Unconventional, legally questionable, and probably hazardous to human health, but you've got something." Karen sat across from her, suspicion and curiosity warring on her face. "Explain." "People are driving from 5 subdivisions away to sit in your contaminated water. Your Facebook page has 3,000 followers. Channel 7 wants to do a feature story." Martha pulled out a newspaper clipping. "You're accidentally brilliant at this." The article's headline read, "Local woman creates underground wellness empire in HOA battle." Karen's eyes widened as she read. "They called me an entrepreneur." "You are one," Martha said, and for the first time in their 7-year rivalry, she sounded genuine. "A completely insane one who's going to get everyone poisoned, but an entrepreneur nonetheless." Martha pulled out the final document from her briefcase. "Here's my proposal. The HOA has a community center with an actual licensed spa facility that's been closed for 3 years because we couldn't find anyone to run it. You take over the operation, follow basic health codes, and we split the profits 60-40. Karen stared at the contract. 60-40 in whose favor? "Yours," Martha admitted. "You're the one with the vision. I'm just the one with the permits." Outside, Inspector Rodriguez was making his morning rounds and stopped dead when he saw Karen's backyard. The mud pit was gone, replaced by a normal-looking garden. The ducks had vanished. Even the mysterious green stains on the concrete had been scrubbed away. 2 hours later, Martha and Karen stood at the community center's abandoned spa facility, both wearing hard hats, and the expressions of unlikely business partners. "We'll need to upgrade the filtration system," Martha said, consulting her clipboard, "and probably hire someone who actually knows about water chemistry." "The healing frequencies sound system stays," Karen countered. "Non-negotiable." "Fine. But we're not calling it toxic release therapy. What about renewal and rejuvenation experience?" Martha considered this. "I can work with that." 6 months later, the Maplewood Wellness Center was booked solid through the following spring. Karen had toned down her more mystical claims, but had managed to create something genuinely relaxing and surprisingly legitimate. Martha handled the business side with ruthless efficiency, while Karen focused on what she did best, making people believe in the possibility of transformation. The Duck family had taken up permanent residence in the center's meditation garden, where they served as unofficial therapy animals for stressed-out suburbanites seeking meaning in their perfectly manicured lives. But late at night, when the center was closed and the lights were dimmed, Karen would sometimes stand by the pristine, properly chlorinated pool and smile to herself. She had plans, bigger plans that would make her backyard Jacuzzi look like child's play. After all, the community center was just phase 1, and Karen Blackwell had never been the type to think small. By Thursday morning, Karen's Blackwell Wellness Retreat had become the talk of Maplewood Estates. What started as one woman's delusional spa day had somehow evolved into a full-scale operation, complete with hand-painted signs advertising chakra alignment sessions and toxic release therapy. The HOA board had called an emergency meeting the night before, during which President Martha Sterling, Karen's longtime nemesis and philosophical opposite, had stood at the head of the conference table like a general preparing for war. The Blackwell situation has escalated beyond acceptable parameters, Martha announced, her silver hair pulled back so tightly it seemed to lift her eyebrows. We have reports of people actually showing up for these so-called healing sessions. Ward member Tom Henderson shifted uncomfortably in his chair. My wife went over there yesterday, paid $20 to sit in that cesspool. She came home smelling like a fish market and claiming she could see her aura. The ducks have multiplied, added Secretary Linda Walsh, consulting her notes with the seriousness of someone documenting a natural disaster. Current count is 7 adults and what appear to be recently hatched ducklings. Karen has named them all and claims they're part of the healing process. Martha's jaw tightened. She's running an unlicensed business, harboring wild animals, creating a public health hazard, and violating approximately 17 HOA covenants. The woman has to be stopped. The next morning, Karen emerged from her house to find a bright yellow notice posted on her front door, sealed with the official HOA stamp that struck fear into the hearts of homeowners throughout the subdivision. Cease and desist order violation of Convenances 3.4, 7.2, 9.1, 12.6, and the numerous municipal health CODEs. Karen read the notice twice, her expression shifting from confusion to indignation to something that might have been glee. She crumpled the paper into a ball and tossed it over her shoulder. You can't cease and desist spiritual awakening. She called out to no one in particular, though Martha Sterling's curtains twitched suspiciously across the street. 20 minutes later, Karen was back in her green lagoon, but this time she wasn't alone. 3 neighbors sat around the edge of the jacuzzi, their feet dangling in the mysterious water while Karen lectured them about energy meridians and the healing power of duck companionship. The HOA fears what they don't understand, Karen explained, her voice carrying the conviction of someone who'd never doubted herself for even a moment. They want to suppress our natural connection to Mother Earth's healing embrace. Mrs. Chen from 2 houses down nodded sagely, apparently unbothered by the fact that one of the ducklings had just used her foot as a launching pad. I do feel more centered, she admitted. Though that might be the sulfur smell. It reminds me of those fancy spas in Iceland. By noon, the line of curious neighbors stretched from Karen's backyard to the street. Word had spread through social media, and people were driving in from other subdivisions to experience what local Facebook groups were calling the miracle of Maplewood. Martha Sterling watched from her living room window, her hands gripping her coffee mug so tightly her knuckles had gone white. The cease and desist order hadn't just failed. It had given Karen free publicity. This is war, Martha muttered, reaching for her phone. She dialed the number she'd hoped never to use, the one that connected directly to the city's health department. Hello, yes, I need to report a public health emergency, she said, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding across the street. We have someone operating an unlicensed spa facility in contaminated water, and I believe she may be charging admission. The city health inspector arrived at exactly 2:47 p.m., his white van pulling up to Karen's house like an ambulance responding to a medical emergency. Inspector Rodriguez stepped out carrying a clipboard, testing kit, and the weary expression of someone who'd seen too much in his 15-year career. Karen met him at her front door wearing a flowing kaftan that had seen better days and a smile that could have powered the entire subdivision. Welcome to Blackwell Wellness Retreat, she announced, spreading her arms wide as if greeting a long-lost relative. Are you here for the afternoon session? We're currently offering a discount for first-time visitors who bring their own towel. Inspector Rodriguez consulted his clipboard. Ma'am, I'm here about reports of an unlicensed commercial operation and potential health hazards. I need to inspect your facility. Of course. Karen's smile never wavered. Transparency is essential for healing. The universe demands it. What Inspector Rodriguez found in Karen's backyard defied easy categorization. The jacuzzi, now hosting 12 ducks of various ages, contained water that registered colors not found in nature. A group of 6 people sat in folding chairs around the perimeter, their feet soaking in the mysterious liquid, while Karen's 17-year-old neighbor Jimmy played what he claimed were healing frequencies on his guitar. "Ma'am," the inspector said carefully, pulling out his testing kit, "when was this water last treated with proper chemicals?" Karen waved dismissively. "Chemicals disrupt the natural healing process. This water has been purified by intention and positive energy. Also, the ducks contribute their own natural probiotics." Inspector Rodriguez stared at her for a long moment, then began taking water samples with the methodical precision of someone collecting evidence at a crime scene. The test results were immediate and horrifying. The water contained bacteria levels that would have made a medieval plague pit seem pristine. The pH was so far outside normal ranges that it technically qualified as a new category of liquid. Most concerning of all, something was growing in the water that the inspector's equipment couldn't identify. "Ma'am, this facility is immediately condemned," Inspector Rodriguez announced, posting an official red notice that made the HOA's cease and desist order look like a friendly suggestion. "No one is permitted to enter this water under any circumstances." Karen's customers, she'd stopped pretending they weren't customers hours ago, began gathering their belongings with disappointed murmurs. But Karen herself showed no sign of defeat. "Healing often requires breaking through resistance," she announced to the retreating crowd. "The authorities fear our spiritual revolution." As the inspector packed up his equipment, he couldn't help but notice that Karen was already dragging a garden hose toward the jacuzzi. "What are you planning to do?" he asked. "Phase 2. Karen replied cryptically. "If they won't let us heal in water, we'll heal with earth. I'm thinking a mud bath situation. Very authentic, very grounding." Inspector Rodriguez made a note to drive by tomorrow and possibly invest in stronger antacids. Meanwhile, Martha Sterling watched from her window as the inspector's van pulled away. She felt a moment of satisfaction until she saw Karen wheeling a wheelbarrow full of potting soil toward the condemned jacuzzi. "She's not actually going to," Martha began, then stopped herself. Of course Karen was going to. The woman treated municipal citations like suggestions and HOA violations like personal challenges. Martha reached for her phone again, but hesitated. Calling the authorities had only made Karen more determined. Maybe it was time for a different strategy. Maybe it was time to fight fire with fire. The first thing that hit you when walking past Karen Blackwell's backyard wasn't the smell, though that came second. It was the sight of her standing waist-deep in what could only be described as swamp water, arms stretched toward the sky, like she was channeling some ancient deity. The murky green liquid in her jacuzzi bubbled ominously, steam rising in thick clouds that made the air shimmer like a desert mirage. "It's a healing spa," Karen announced to absolutely no one, her voice carrying across 3 neighboring yards, with the confidence of someone who'd never been wrong about anything in her 47 years. "The minerals are working their magic." What minerals, exactly, remained a mystery, considering the jacuzzi hadn't been cleaned since the Clinton administration. Dead leaves floated on the surface like tiny boats fleeing a toxic harbor, and something that might have once been a pool noodle had evolved into what looked suspiciously like pond scum with aspirations. But this wasn't even the most shocking part of Karen's morning routine. At exactly 7:23 a.m., 17 minutes before the HOA-mandated quiet hours ended, Karen had dragged her portable speaker outside and begun blasting what she generously called healing frequencies. To everyone else within a half-mile radius, it sounded like a combination of whale songs, construction equipment, and someone slowly torturing a synthesizer. "The vibrations align my chakras with the universe's natural abundance," she explained to Mrs. Patterson's horrified face peering over the fence. "You should try it, ladies. You look spiritually constipated." Mrs. Patterson retreated behind her hydrangeas, muttering what sounded like prayers or curses, possibly both. The third shocking moment came when Karen decided her spa experience needed enhancement. She disappeared into her house and returned with a bottle of what appeared to be green food coloring and a container of Epsom salts that had seen better decades. Without hesitation, she dumped both into the already questionable water, creating a chemical reaction that produced bubbles the size of dinner plates and a color that could only be described as radioactive swamp. Detoxification is supposed to look dramatic, Karen announced, a parody to the universe itself, since all the neighbors had fled indoors by now. But the fourth and most shocking moment was yet to come. As Karen settled back into her toxic soup, something moved beneath the surface, something that definitely wasn't supposed to be there. A family of ducks, apparently confused by the unusual ecosystem Karen had created, had taken up residence in the far corner of the jacuzzi. Karen's eyes met those of the largest duck. For a moment, woman and waterfowl stared at each other across the bubbling green divide. Then Karen smiled the kind of smile that had gotten her elected HOA president 3 times running. "Welcome to Blackwell Wellness Retreat," she told the ducks solemnly. "The healing waters embrace all beings." By 8:15 am, Gladys Patterson was on the phone with the HOA emergency hotline, her voice shaking with barely contained hysteria. She's communing with wildlife in contaminated water while violating at least 6 noise ordinances. Gladys whispered urgently. "And I think she's charging the ducks admission."